Hi, I'm Mr. Prince. I am one of the civics teachers here, and we're starting a new unit. This unit, you can probably read it on the screen right now as I click the present button and hide this guy and hide that guy. This is Unit 2. It's the American colonies and their government. This unit is kind of a crash course on um, early American history. Where did we come from? And this will give us a good foundation of working forward from there. Because if you want to understand anything, we got to start at the beginning. So today, we're going to begin with some notes on 2A. I can identify the three main cultures that converged and influenced the creation of the United States. And you probably clicked this link. Or maybe you didn't. Maybe you just clicked on Google Classroom. What is culture, first of all? Other classes might do a better job at tackling this concept because it's huge. But for us, this is going to be the custom arts, social institutions, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or social group. So, for instance, everything you do is culture. Think of something you do. That's culture. Language, religion, food, clothing, values, holidays, folktales, literature, music, and more. That's just to name a few. But everything that we have structured around ourselves in society has come from our culture. With that out of the way, we want to learn early America, what three cultures converged. It's a dark past. Not going to sugarcoat this one, peeps. We're going to look at Europeans, Native Americans, and Africans. So many of you have probably have an inkling through conversation with others or classes in your past. But many European colonizers and slave traders prioritized economic gain, which led to various atrocities. I do want to put a footnote in there. There are also many European colonists that were trying to escape famine as well. So with that out of the way, what were these atrocities? With a disconnection from the land, Europeans often over-extracted resources, leaving kind of barren wasteland um, in their tracks. Then there's a lot of assimilation because of the dominance that they had. They assimilated both Africans and native peoples to their culture by mass erasure of their language, beliefs, custom, and customs. And we have an estimated 50 to 90% of the indigenous population was killed by disease. So many that researchers found that the planet even cooled down. If this doesn't make sense to you, you will learn about this in your academic future. Basically, us humans produce methane, whether inadvertently or directly, meaning it's built up greenhouse gases that warms the earth and may be the destruction or future destruction. But that's a different class. And then lastly, it's an approximate 400 years of African slavery. This forever changed how cultures would interact, even until this very day. Why did this all happen? We have this concept called the Columbian Exchange. Where did we get this word Columbian exchange from? From Columbus. So if y'all are familiar with Christopher Columbus, he was not the first European by any means, but this was often referred to as the major landmark of where this exchange began. So this was resources and human labor were imported to and from other regions. If we take a peek at this map, it all starts in England. So they send over guns, cloth, iron, and beer to Africa. And they were in contact with many African leaders, chiefs, kings for a long time. And they would send back other valuable resources. But one most sought after were slaves. They would head over to the West Indies, and these slaves would produce certain resources that would be brought over to the North America. And then slaves would also be brought to North America, and honestly, on the western half of this image, we're just seeing a lot of resources that are being. That's the main goal. This is a capitalistic venture. It's an extraction of resources, if you will. Like I said in the previous couple slides ago, this was for economic gain. So it's a trade of human labor for economic gain in this triangular route. I use this word triangular route. So let's break this down step by step because I went over it really quick and really sloppily just then. Stage one, ships left Great Britain with trade goods and they head to the West African coast. They're carrying British-made trade goods, so liquor, guns, cloth, and ironware, and these are highly sought after in the West African coast. So goods are traded, and it's traded for men, women, children who are captured by slave traders. So these are not the Europeans running amok trying to capture African peoples. These are African leaders that are either capturing prisoners of war because there's hundreds of tribal conflicts going on in Africa. It's a very divided continent. And so many of these peoples, the African chiefs and kings, justified these captures and sales because they did not have a connection to these peoples. Stage two, slave ships fill on West African coast and head to the Caribbean islands or the West Indies. So European dealers bought or traded for enslaved Africans, and many, as you can imagine, families were separated. The Middle Passage voyage brought captive slaves to the Caribbean islands. As you can see on these images here, there were terrible, awful conditions that these people underwent, and I'd say around near 20% did not make the voyage, whether it's from famine, abuse, or suicide. Stage three, slaves sold at auction, and raw materials are brought back to Great Britain. So where it all began. Let's go on to this one. Slaves were sold in the West Indies at auction to the highest bidder. So they are now regarded as property. As you can imagine, in order for a human to do this to another human, there must have been some sort of dehumanization in the process. And I say some sort very lightly. It's quite amount of dehumanization that would needed to do this to a fellow human being. 2/3 of slaves were brought to the Americas to work on plantations, and no pay and no rights. Very harsh living conditions. I'd like to give another footnote right now, people. You're going to learn this much more in detail in a U.S. history course and world history course. Like I said, this is a crash course on it to give us the foundation for what we need to move on to, how our government will be inevitably structured and affected by something this horrific. So to give you a visual, there's stage 1, 2, and 3, as I showed you in the beginning. So we bring goods, and then with those goods, slaves are purchased. Slaves are brought to the Caribbean islands and West Indies and further up in North America. And raw materials that were sought after were brought to Europe. Notice sugar, cotton, and tobacco. These are 3 things that are not necessarily to sustain human life. In fact, many Europeans were undergoing a famine. They could not survive. So it goes to show these materials that were being gathered, like the end result, are these necessary for human life at the expense of human life? Something to kick around. This is something we're not going to do within this video because I'm not going to show you a video within a video. But this is a very, I just gave you a crash course, and John Green in Crash Course History, if anyone's ever watched this YouTube channel, also gives incredible crash course on the subject, but we don't have time for that, nor am I going to show you a video within a video. Just wanted to bring up the Middle Passage. So within the Columbian Exchange, we saw slavery. how was this able to happen? It was because of the Middle Passage. So this was the congregated efforts of Europeans to, they had an abundance of resources, but they had a lack of human labor. And they found out that they could use this surplus of human labor in West Africa to scrounge up the surplus of resources in the Americas to bring back to Europe. So they're densely packed in ships. Africans were transported across the Atlantic, hence the name the Atlantic slave trade, and to the West Indies and sold for slave labor. The voyage, if you can imagine 3 to 4 months, imagine being on a ship for an entire summer. You're chained in rows or spooned. If I think it was approximately 4 square feet. So I can't show you that visually right now, but this image somewhat depicts it. But basically, you are in fetal position for 3 to 4 months. Imagine the bathroom situation, the food situation, the heat. Uh, there were also, so that goes for unsanitary conditions. And if you think COVID, it spreads easy, or the flu spreads easy, imagine the sickness and disease. And some ships would lose a majority of people because of these unsanitary conditions and sickness and disease. So this is another graphic that shows where these Africans were being sent to in the Americas. Most people don't know this, are sent to South Africa, more specifically Brazil, with 3.5 million going there, approximately 450,000 going to British North America. And the Spanish had quite a bit, 1.5 million, and the West Indies had about 1.6 million. Same with French West Indies at 1.6. This is another video I'm not going to show you within a video, but this was something that would show us what are the effects that we are feeling to this day. And this graphic here does an okay job at giving us a glimpse into what those are. So destruction of traditional cultures, either within Africa itself or as these people are brought to the Americas. The rich got richer. This became basically an arms race. This was for guns. The reason that these African kings and leaders wanted these materials, many were guns, were to win their conflicts where they were. What is the social impact of slavery today? This doesn't go away. 400 years of this does not go away very quickly. There are still impacts we're feeling to this day, and some much stronger than others. Warlords in control, so this solidified those who followed very aggressive ways of developing a society that solidified their role within that country. And on top of this, famine became increasingly a theme in the Africas as well, because they were trading resources that could have been used in other ways for usually resources that did not provide sustenance. So food for guns. This increased the issue of famine within Africa that is rampant to this day. That's it for 2A. Hope this helped a little bit, y'all. Email your teacher if you have any questions, and we would be happy to help you. So, bye. Nice to meet you. I know this is my first video, so I'm going to exit this now. Email me to say what's up to you, by the way. Okay, bye.